Ladies and gentlemen, Tracey is a thought leader and a speaker on the impact of technology on society, work and careers. She's been a visiting scholar at Stanford. She's held leadership positions at Apple, Hewlett-Packard and Cisco. She's authored 11 books and was named San Francisco Woman of the Year. Now, so this is about technology, careers in technology. It's something that Ladies and gentlemen, Tracey is a thought leader and a speaker on the impact of technology on society, work and careers. She's been a visiting scholar at Stanford. She's held leadership positions at Apple, Hewlett-Packard and Cisco. She's authored 11 books and was named San Francisco Woman of the Year. Now, so this is about technology, careers in technology. It's something that I struggle with. I'm sure many of you do. I had a particularly awkward incident recently. I do have a Twitter account, although I'm somewhat of a Luddite. And I have a Twitter account so I can tweet this conference back to myself so that I can keep the notes of it. Nobody else knows the address. But what I noticed the other day, one of my friends from the CFA in the US tweeted that I won this award that I was lucky to win about this CIO of the Year thing. And so I thought that was nice, and I saw that 2 people had liked this tweet, and I thought they might be some of my friends from the US, and I thought I'd try and find out who they were so I could send them a note. And I didn't know how to do this, and I clicked on something, and it turns out I liked it myself, which was not what I was intending to do. I was the 3rd person to like something about myself, and I have no way of knowing how to unlike it, and so if anyone could help me, that would be wonderful. Now, we know how profound these changes are in our lives, just like that, and I wonder how many of us are secretly a little bit scared about what it's going to mean for us as people and as a people. To what extent will it change us, and to what extent will we be able to keep up? So, ladies and gentlemen, let's find out more. Please join me in welcoming Tracey Wilen. And I should say before she comes on stage that uniquely her best concert of all time was at the Grammys, which is a pretty good one. So, ladies and gentlemen, Tracey Wilen.
How are you? Thank you very much. You know, I love technology. I really do a lot. It doesn't always work. And when it doesn't work, it's usually my fault. But I know that there's people here that love technology as much as I do. I'll tell you how I know. As I'm walking around the conference, I see everybody on a smart device. 7 billion in the world. They say there's more smart devices than people. United States, they say the ratio is 1 to 3. You're on LinkedIn. Thanks for linking with me. 2 people link every second. You're a Facebook user. I know you're using it at the conference. If they totaled up all of us Facebook users, we'd be the 3rd largest country in the world. And that's what today's talk is about. It's talk about how technology is seeped into your lives, you're using it, it's making your life easier, and you love it as much as me, but it's also changing work, right? Our careers, the environments that we work in. And what I'd like to talk about is a few things. Some of the macro forces that are impacting us, some of the micro trends, how industries are changing, how leadership and work may need to change, and a little bit about you. Is it time for a career selfie? So let me start off with some of the macro force trends. Extreme longevity. You, my friends in the room, are living to 100. I heard people making noise because nobody believes me when I say that people are living to 100. How many people know someone who's 80 years old? How many people know someone who's 90 years old? How many people know someone who's 100 years old? It's logical that you'll be living to 100, right? And that changes it because even if you don't want to live to 100, science is going to help you. They're developing pills so we can live over 100. We can edit the DNA of our children so that they outlive us and take care of us, right? So I went out to over 200 leaders like yourself and I said to them, what does it mean to you if I said you're going to live to 100? And they said, you know what, Tracey, if I'm going to live to 100, I'm going to have to afford to live to 100. And if I'm going to have to afford to live to 100, that means I might need to work until I'm 80. 80, oh my God, my parents told me, right, I started working at 20. They told me I'd be out the door and done by 55 and retired. Here we have a gentleman working at 101. Right? And they said, if I'm gonna have to live to 100 and work to 80, I'm gonna have to stay healthy enough. I'm gonna have to stay educated enough. And I'm going to have to stay technical enough. And that's daunting. If you're working 60, 70, 80 years, you might outlive the firms. But on the other side, here you are as managers, directors, vice presidents, and leaders. You're seeing it play out in the workforce, aren't you? You might have 3 generations in your workforce. You might have 4 generations in the workforce. You might have 5 generations in your workforce. McDonald's tells me their youngest employee is 14 and a half, and Walmart tells me their oldest employees we saw is 101. Now think about when you have 5 generations in the workforce, or 4 like you have now, all the complexities around that. Every generation has a different idea about work. Every generation has a different idea about leadership. Every generation comes in with some different orientation about education or philosophy. But you know what I hear about the most? Is every generation has a different idea about technology. Some generations love it. They want everything on an app. It's more efficient, it's faster. Why is this company not on apps by now? Other generations say, we have been successful without technology. Why on earth would we start now? And some generations just say, you know what, I'm really interested in technology. I didn't grow up with it, but if you're willing to help me move along, I'd be willing to learn it. It made me think about a video I saw on YouTube. It's actually a clip from a movie, but it made me think about generations in technology. There's a young woman, she's presumably a millennial. She gives her dad, presumably a boomer, an iPad for his birthday. And she swings by to see how's dad doing with the iPad. And he says, it's fantastic. The problem is he didn't realize it's a kitchen utensil. Let's take a look.
Sag mal, Papa, habe ich dich noch gar nicht gefragt. Wie kommst du denn eigentlich mit dem neuen iPad zurecht, was wir dir zum Geburtstag geschenkt haben?
Gut.
Mit den ganzen Apps kommst du klar?
Was denn für Apps? Geh mal bitte einen Schritt zur Seite. So. Was ist?
Yeah, I know you're laughing. You're laughing because that's either you or somebody you know. We live in a VUCA world, volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. I'm told it's an Army War College term describing the day in the life of a first responder. But here's what it is these leaders who I research and talk to tell me that's what it's like to run a company today. Because you just never know, right, what's going to happen. There could be a snowstorm that wipes out your business or people can't get to work. There could be a cyber attack. Who ever heard of cyber attacks, right? New on the scene. We have to protect our data and our networks. But here's what's really bugging leaders today in this VUCA world. It's when that tiny little startup comes out of nowhere and tries to eat your lunch, right? Who heard of Uber 5 years ago, and now I live on Uber everywhere that I travel? Who heard of Airbnb 5 years ago, and now everybody's telling me how they're staying and renting rooms in Airbnb, right? Robo-advisors have come on the scene, right? Technology startups just kind of coming out of nowhere and creating a VUCA life. Volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous of what it's like to run companies today. Very different than in the past. Another force is smart machines and automation. I think people may remember Watson, right? The first supercomputer that beat people in jeopardy. And now Google has artificial intelligence that is beating people in the game Go. Smart machines that can learn and continue to learn. Very interesting shifts for our businesses. Also, we've become an on-demand economy, right? Everything is a swipe of a finger and an app. Your industry, what an opportunity. You can reach all of us, right, or your businesses, your consumers, now in their palm, right? It's changing the way that we need to think about the uses and possibilities that technology has created for us. We live in a globally connected world that has opened up the opportunities, but also flat world labor. Let me explain. eBay came on the scene many years ago, but I was one of those people who looked at eBay, which is an electronic marketplace, and I said, you know what, I could run a business in under an hour off my computer by selling things. I took things out of my closet and sold them, and I took in international currency, just like that. I had never thought that an individual could become a global enterprise. I wasn't an enterprise. I could become a global firm just like that. And you know, that's evolved, right? We have Etsy today and Zazzle, and all of these marketplaces now are available to us. International business used to just be importing and exporting, but not anymore. But now today I use something called Upwork. It's also a marketplace. It's a marketplace of labor. So I go out in the electronic marketplace and I find people to help me with my slides, to edit some text for me, right? To crunch some numbers for me, even do some statistics. Some people I find are PhDs and they only charge me $1 an hour. Global enterprise, global world can be a great opportunity. You can have a business just like that, or it could create a very competitive environment. It makes you think about, how am I going to survive, right? Not only as a firm, great opportunities, but as an employee. So I started to think about, well, what is the future of employees and firms? If I can find on-demand labor to do a lot of tasks, what are we here for, right? Apple announced at their developer conference, not this year, the year before actually, that they were spending $10 billion to crowdsource innovation, going out all over the world and paying the creative class, so to speak, the engineers to make apps, apps for your iPads, apps for your phones, apps for your iWatch, right? At the same time, American Express and a whole host of firms are going out and crowdsourcing innovation. And they're paying big bucks for it too. Which sort of makes me wonder, what is the firm evolving into? The firm that we know today, what will that look like tomorrow? If I'm going out and saying I got to find innovation outside to the creative class, and I'm going out to Upwork and other sites for on-demand labor, what about the people inside the firm? Am I turning them into cogs in a wheel? Are they just becoming operation imbeciles? I would hope not. I would think not. But we rather would need to think about how we evolve with this. And then I look at the freelancing. I remember in the United States, they were saying, freelancing is popular because people don't have jobs. Well, now unemployment's down to about 5%, 5.5%. People aren't coming back. 1 out of 3 of the creative class is freelancing for a reason. They don't want to be in that operational environment. They don't want to be cogs in a wheel on the corporate treadmill, the salary treadmill, as some call it. They want to make the big bucks. They want to innovate. So we need to let them, right? We don't want to lose our best class. So we talked about, well, then what do we need today? We came up with something called the T person. It's called transdisciplinarity. It's a really big word. Just think of breadth and depth with an overlay of technology, just like a T. As leaders, we need to be more strategic. We need to be holistic. We need to be specialists and technical at the same time. And we need to figure out how to make sure that our employees have those opportunities so that we can bring them into the firm and they can innovate and they can grow the firm. The T person, transdisciplinarity. I also think about, well, how is technology changing industry? I take something really simple. Think about the car. I think everybody can identify with the car. We have small cars, we have inexpensive cars like the Nano, we have expensive cars like the Bugatti, we have custom cars like the Mini Cooper, and my goodness, we have electric cars, we have natural gas cars, and we even have the autonomous car. In fact, many people would say that they are intelligent devices or computers on wheels. And I would say, yeah, maybe, because I do remember when a car, I used to do the gas and the oil. It actually took a key, right, not a fob. Right? You can't even do that anymore, right? It's so computerized, right? You have to wait to get an alert to bring your car in. But I said, you know what? Actually, I don't think it's about hardware anymore. It's about software, isn't it? See, out by me, these cars, they drive all over the place. It's the Google autonomous car. And you always know them because there's nobody in the front seat. Everybody's in the back seat. GPS, software, sensors, just guiding these cars all over the place. In fact, my friends at Google said to me, you know what, Tracey? We went to the DMV and we said, these cars don't need pedals and steering wheels. And the DMV said, you've got to be crazy. Humans cannot absorb not being able to control their car. You have to leave them in. Even if the car doesn't need it, you have to leave them in. So we've shifted into a software world which makes you think about industries. If something as secure and well-known as a car, with its industry in Detroit or Germany, Japan, the big players of today may shift. Look at the players that are projected in the auto industry of tomorrow. Apple's making a car, Uber's certainly making a car, Tesla and Google. Very quickly, industries can change, a lot of it driven by software. And then BMW said, well, you know what, Tracey? Actually, as these cars get much more innovative and sophisticated, we really have to start thinking about how we train our personnel, right? We can't train them like we used to in the past. I'm going to show you how BMW is training their personnel using wearable technology and augmented virtual reality. Let's take a look. Okay, this is the trainee. He's going to put on the wearable technologies like Google Glass. That will enable him to see using augmented virtual reality and be trained. See things in the engine. He can hear.
Release 2 screws.
And he can respond.
intake duct.
Now, I remember when I worked in manufacturing, training was having a person on your left shoulder and a person on your right shoulder that showed you everything. Think about the possibilities that wearable technology and augmented virtual reality and how it's transforming industries. Something as simple as training. So I think I may have made a point that we've shifted from a classical world to a technology world, and that the forces may be changing the nature of work and employees, which means that we might need to think about some new skills. And that's what I and my executives and research team did. We came up with 10 skills. I do not have time to go through them all today, but I picked about 3 that might be more relevant for your industry. The first one is multimedia literacy. Do you know that 65 to 75% of us are actually visual learners? 18 to 34-year-olds, for example, would rather learn on a tutorial on YouTube than through a text or textbook. Yet for some reason, we keep delivering information using the same flat way, text, whether it's to customers, whether it's to our employees, whether it's in training. Multimedia literacy gives us the ability of another genre that we can engage people. Let me just give you an example. I was over in Amsterdam. It was actually two Decembers ago. And it was on business. And I saw all these people running down the street to downtown, rushing. And I said, oh my God, is there an emergency? And they said, no emergency, Tracy, it's a store opening. I said, a store opening? What store? They said, H&M. I don't shop there. They said, no, Tracy, you have to go to this store opening because it is nothing like any other store opening you've been to. And boy, were they right. I took some clips for you. This is called 3D building mapping. I know many people may have already seen it all over the world, but the idea is that it takes gray buildings using multimedia projected on it to bring it to life. Let's take a look. As the building comes to life. You know, if you can hear the screams, the entire city of Amsterdam is on fire. Opens up to see what's inside. Hear that crowd? See the eyeball? What's on sale?
Expression. So, choice. Chasing perfection. Chasing perfection. Are you sure you're ready for this?
Are you ready for this? Do you know that I was the first person who walked in that door? I was so excited. I didn't care if I didn't shop there. I had to be in that building, and so did thousands of people in Amsterdam because they engaged me. They engaged me using multimedia. Think of the possibilities that could happen if you, in addition to text, bring it alive. Big data. It's everywhere. Right? It's one of the projections of opportunities in the financial industry, right? Sense making. How do you make sense of all this data that's being created? It's a skill. It's a skill that we all need to have. Let me just give you another example. I'm sure people may have heard of a retail store called Nordstrom. Well, Nordstrom called me, it was about 2 years ago in July, And they said, Tracey, we miss you. And I said, you miss me? And they said, yeah, we really miss you. And I said, how could you miss me if you don't know me? And they said, well, actually, Tracey, we know you. You see, you opted in, you gave us your email address, right? You use your credit cards here. We've been collecting data on you for 3 years, and we miss you. You see, we miss you because we know that you shop here every December and July. You see, we know a lot more about you. We know the brands that you buy. We know the departments that you shop in. We even think we know your favorite salesperson. And you did not come in last July. So we thought, well, maybe you're a business travel, judging on your clothes. And we thought, well, she could be on a business trip. And they said, well, it was the holiday month, December, so maybe she was off celebrating holidays with family. But God forbid if we lost you to Neiman and Marcus or H&M or Macy's or some of our competitors. And so, Tracey, we want you to come back. We're going to put a $100 gift certificate right here at the store. It's in Palo Alto, where I live. And we're going to have your salesperson waiting for you so you can come back in August, because that's how much we miss you. But really, it's quite interesting is you get off the phone with a phone call like that and you say, that was the creepiest phone call I've ever had. So what do? I called up Nordstrom HR. I had no idea who to call. I call up HR. I call up HR for everything. Nordstrom HR, I got this call from customer service in Palo Alto, Nordstrom. They told me that they missed me, and that they missed me because they knew me and they knew my salesperson, and they're going to give me $100, which I'll gladly take, but they had to bring me back into the store by August. What the heck is going on? And they said, oh, Tracey, data scientists, Palo Alto, internships. We brought in all these interns to help us make sense of the data, right? Because Tracey, you see, we want to get to know you better as a customer, so we have the right inventory in the store when you come in. We want to understand your buying patterns and habits so that we can address them better. And yes, ultimately, we'd like to increase sales. Sense making. How do you make sense of the data? Last skill, novel and adaptive thinking. Can you borrow a trend or a technology that may not be in your vertical and use it in a way to solve a problem that you're already solving in a better way or in a different way? Let me give you an example. 3D printing. 3D printing, for those who don't understand, but it's pretty commonplace today, is just imagine your printer. And instead of pouring in ink, you can pour in liquid metal or liquid plastic, and you can print about anything today. In fact, it transformed manufacturing, right? Because we used to build prototypes, and now we can just print them. We can print parts. You can print toys. I've even seen wedding cake icing being printed from a 3D printer. So now we have a physician, a reconstructive physician. He replaces noses, chins, ears on people. He reconstructs them using different kind of materials. He looks at the 3D printer and says, I wonder if I could put liquid human collagen into the printer and print ears, human ears. He's been very successful in his practice, no doubt of that. But now he's looking and saying, can I adopt that new technology because it didn't exist before and do something better for humankind? Let's take a look at Dr. Benasser's printed ear.
I'm Dr. Benasser, and my lab makes ears. This ink is actually a living ink. It contains living cells. It's alive when we put it into the printer. It's alive when it comes out of the printer. The real power of the printing technique is that it can be used to make geometries that you just can't make with any other technique. You can make parts with holes in them. We can layer and cover and put different cells next to each other to create really the complex organs that make up our bodies. And after 2 months in an incubator, the tissue fills in and looks white, just like real cartilage.
Dr. Nasser's ears, novel and adaptive thinking. Can you borrow a technology or a trend and resolve a problem that you're already solving so incredibly well, but in a unique and different way? I'm going to touch on a couple of the micro forces in the workforce because, let's face it, as we look at the digital world as it's changing, we also need to evolve with it. Some of the things, the employee mindset has been replaced with the entrepreneurial mindset. That is, you need to become CEO of your own job and encourage your employees to become proactive about their jobs and their careers. In fact, I would tell my employees on day one, you need to be our next leader. Succession planning needs to start on day one. And I would ask them, tell me about your job today. That's great, because a year from now, your job is going to look completely different. Why? Because of you. You will become that T person that will lead our firm into the future in a digital world. Longevity does not mean promotion anymore. No, a lot of managers, directors, vice presidents said, I want employees to come in and solve problems that are different, right? Do be above and beyond. Because it is all about contribution today. I read this article. This is a janitor at Disney. Her job is to be a janitor at Disney parks in Orlando. But she's creative, so she started drawing Disney characters on the sidewalk with her mop. And she drew crowds in to see her draw the Disney characters on the mop. Disney loved it because she took ownership of her career and her job. She's a leader. These are the kinds of people that we need to let emerge and promote them. Contribution is key. The role of the individual, I remember getting cash bonuses for being an all-star player. The one who could catch and dive and save the firm. Think about it today, it's crazy. We live in a VUCA world. Nobody can catch and dive, one person alone. What if that person goes away? Today, it's all about teams, isn't it? So you might be the A player or have an A player on your team. Make sure that A player brings your B players across the line. That's what it's about today in a complex world, in a global world. We need high-performing teams. Corporate culture is the glue. In a distributed world, we need to make sure that we have consistency, right? It used to be you walked in the door and everybody looked the same and acted the same. Well, now we need to roll that out, right? How do we make sure the culture helps consistency across the world? And making your manager look good, it's over. It's all about making your company look good because you have a strong employee brand. Think about it. The first person you met in the hotel today was not the general manager, was it? It was probably the bellboy at the front desk. Your interpretation of this hotel is made completely on your experience with that person's brand. The first person that you meet on an airline is not the general manager. It's the flight attendant or maybe even the pilot. And your whole impression of that airline is made on that personal brand. So personal brand is very important for corporations. And social intelligence. Leaders in the room, vice presidents, directors, managers. If you didn't have your title, would people follow you? Employees in the room. If I could self-select my team, would I pick you? Today it's all about social intelligence. It's emotional intelligence, but you have to have the ability to get along with people because it is so complex, because it is so distributed. Social intelligence. So leaders are doing a lot of things today to try to make sure that they take care of their employees, whether it's lateral moves, job rotations, cross-functional teams, high visibility projects, you name it. Let's make our employees into T people. It's very important. But employees, you're not off the hook. I always say, is it time for a career selfie. About a year ago, Google came out with the statistics that 93 million selfies were taken per day on the Android. Goodness knows how many were taken on the iPhone, too. And I said, something is out of focus here. Something is wrong with this picture. We're taking so many selfies. So I tried to find some statistics on how much time we're spending on our career planning. And here's what I find. College students, 1 or 2 years out of college looking for a job, they spend about an hour and a half a year on personal career planning, compared to 2,800 hours of sleep. I looked at what are we doing as adults? Well, we're buying cars, we're planning vacations, we're house hunting, we're planning a wedding, we're eating, we're drinking, we're watching. We're just doing everything possible just so we don't have to plan our career. And you may say, why? Because what did I tell you? How old are you living to? 100. So you're going to be spending half your life and a third of your day working. So shouldn't you start to think about taking ownership of your career? But in a digital world, it isn't going to work and having after work anymore, is it? Because when you're at work, it's 24/7, and when you're home, it's 24/7, right? You can't just turn off stuff. So now you need to think about creating your own personal playbook, right? How do I integrate the work, the social, the digital, the education, the skills that I need, and create something that I can live with so that I can have success? You know, many years ago when I was young, my 20s, I met this guy. He was 39. He was CEO of a large firm. And it was very unusual in those days to be 39 years old and a CEO of a public company. Now, out by me, everybody's a CEO by age 20-something, right? Facebook, Twitter. But this was unusual, and so I went up to him and said, how does it that you become a CEO by age 39? And he reached into his wallet and he pulled out this little piece of paper and unfolded it and had all these scribbles on it, just like this. And he said, Tracey, if you want to become a CEO at age 39, write it down. Because you see, when you write things down, your goals, all your energy moves towards it. He said, I wrote down when I wanted to get married, how much money I wanted to make, when I wanted to buy my first house, my second house, when I wanted to retire. He said, it's amazing how life planning is actually pretty simple. Write down your goals. Okay. Inevitably, someone's going to ask me, Tracey, are there any more people in the world? Is it only going to be about a technology future? And I would say people are so critical. We are in a people world and business is people. I just want to make sure that you don't give the wrong people your technology. Let's take a look.
Hello?
Honey? Are you at the club?
Yes.
I'm at the mall now and I found this beautiful leather coat. It's only $1,000. Can I get it?
Well, sure, if you like it that much.
Okay. I also stopped by the Mercedes dealership and saw the new model. You know, the one I really
How
like.
much?
$120.
Well, at that price, I want it with all the options.
Great. Oh, and one more thing. The house we wanted last year is back on the market. They're asking 1.5.
We'll make them an offer. But come in at 1.4.
Okay. I love you, baby.
I love you too.
Okay, bye.
Does anybody know whose phone this is?
You know what I'm talking about as financial advisors. Okay, I'm going to end up with one final video. I show this video because the story behind the video is actually just as interesting or even more interesting than the video itself. The video was sent to me from actually a music teacher. And she was explaining to me that this guy named Eric Whitaker was also a music teacher. He taught choir, physical choir. Students would come in age 12, 13, into class and learn to sing. And what happened is one of his students, very precocious, age 12, 13, went home and didn't want to wait till the next week for choir. So she filmed herself on her iPhone and sent it to him and said, "What do you think? Do I have to wait? Just critique my song." And he said, "Oh my God, that's actually very interesting and beautiful." He went out to the rest of the students in the class and said, "Hey, if you want to send in your piece of the choir and tape yourself, why don't you go ahead and do that? You don't have to wait for class, for the physical meeting." And they did. And then he said, "Well, why do I need to just limit it to my class? Why don't I go out to other music teachers and invite them to invite their students to send in themselves singing the same song?" And they did, and actually it went viral. It went really viral because all of a sudden you got inundated with thousands of videos, and he integrated them together. Today there are over 8 virtual choirs. They go viral on YouTube. People vie to now be selected in one of Eric Whitaker's virtual choirs. So I'm going to play you a segment, I think it's number 3, and watch the beauty of multimedia literacy, novel and adaptive thinking come together in a virtual choir. All the videos from around the world, global. These people don't have to go to a physical class to sing together. Novel and adaptive thinking. Use technology in unique ways. Multimedia literacy can really change how you engage people. Multi-generations in the workforce. Ideas can come from anywhere, even a 12-year-old. I want to thank you very much for your time today. I really appreciate and hope you enjoy the conference.
Thanks, Tracey. That's very cool, but can you unlike something on Twitter? So look, what do you think the human implications of all this are? You know, people working for themselves, people outside of the traditional tribal environment of the workplace, and importantly, protections, employee protections that come under a traditional working model. How do you think that's going to play out?
So what you're saying, in a world where we'll all be 1099s instead of W-2s, what do we do?
I don't know what that means, but...
Anyone in finance here? Yeah, actually, I think it is a very relevant question. And I think that the reality is for many of us is that we will need to take ownership of our careers, particularly if you're living to the age of 100 and your work environment is going to be 60, 70, 80 years. You're going to outlive a lot of firms. You're probably going to have 15 stops in your careers. And quite frankly, I think, you know, each of us will be an independent at some point. But it's really up to us to start thinking about managing this and how we're going to make it happen. So I think it's actually quite exciting.
I suppose it means creating other networks to get that sort of human...
You know, we were talking yesterday about the importance of cities. And I actually am seeing cities evolve into just that. San Francisco, Palo Alto, where I am, Los Angeles, and New York all have integrated office environments now where independents come together because cities have the resources. They have the resources of whether it's free Wi-Fi or coffee or food or the post office or whatever that you need. It's a rich environment to support it. I think what'll be different is that people have more ability today to find people who are like-minded. So it may not be your office mate, what you have in common is the company. You'll have more other things in common.
Yeah, that's interesting. So those of us that are, living to 100 in the workforce for a lot longer, in a digital age that me and I'm sure many people here are struggling with, how are we going to evolve? What do we need to do to survive in that one?
Sure. So, and I'm an immigrant, by the way, to technology, myself. I actually moved into technology and didn't have any background in it. So number one, if you're working in a company, you should tap into the resources of the company. Any kind of training or offerings for skills or experience that they can provide. I also like to tap into vendors and customers, particularly technology vendors, because they're always willing to teach you, and that's very industry specific. Number three is I think you have to engage in a technology that's going to capture your attention. So, for example, my mother got interested in technology because she could categorize her recipes, or, more recently, video with her grandson. And so I think, once you see a practical use of the technology, you will use it. And also go to kids. I think kids are great. They're gonna help you with all your Twitter and Facebook issues. But I also tap into as much education that's available through Apple stores, Microsoft stores, and education centers.
Does the education system have to evolve?
Universities, yeah, so that's a really good question because I, as a faculty, have taught for many years. And I've always taught adult and night students who are working, and that is a dilemma that universities, many have evolved, and many are still training students to become professors, quite frankly. And students will tell me that they come out of university and they can't get a job because they didn't have these internships, or they didn't have any practical experience to combine with the ability to learn and think. So I think universities do have to change, and I think we have to have more robust offerings for our students to get some hands-on experience, and also make sure that they have the ability to touch technology, which I really didn't have when I was growing up, and I think that's really important.
With artificial intelligence and robo-advice and robo-legal and all these sorts of things, you can see industries of employment dying. Taxi drivers, and you can see real challenges there. So where are we going to work? How?
Well, let me tell you a story, because there's actually in New York, there's a hotel called Yotel, and you walk by and there's this enormous bellboy robot there. It's phenomenal, and as you walk by, it's swinging the luggage around, and there's no bellboys to be found anymore. So you could say that their jobs have been displaced. So I go in and I ask them, tell me about the bellboys, what happened? And they said, well, it was really interesting that some of the bellboys said, I can only be a bellboy, and that's all I ever want to be. And so they had to go and try to find a bellboy job somewhere else. They said other bellboys said, I'm ready to expand my experience. And for those, they said, we actually rotated them into other positions around the hotel so that they could have a more robust experience and basically become more valuable. They said, but then there was this one really clever bellboy. He actually said, I understand how that robot works. And I am the best bellboy in New York, a little New York attitude there. So he actually went to the manufacturer of the robot and said, I could be your director of operations.
Is that right? Yeah.
And that's what he did. So I think it's really up to us. Your jobs can be displaced or replaced, or jobs can be created. Just look at Apple Computer alone and how many jobs they've created through their devices.
So our thinking needs to evolve.
Oh, absolutely. I think, I saw my mother-in-law. She's 80 years old, and she said to me, I was trying to explain to her Uber and how it worked, because she was like, how does that work? And, and I was showing as the car came, and she said, Tracey, when I was in my 20s and 30s, I often wondered what would life look like and what kind of jobs would be out there 50 years from now? And she said, and whatever I imagined, it's still completely different, because I never would have thought of that this Uber thing would exist, and it's quite intriguing. So she said, so now when we think about what are jobs going to look like 50 years from now, we don't even know, because we will be continually creating them, and they will look completely different because we don't know where the technology will evolve.
So to that end, computational thinking, something we talked a bit about.
Yeah, so I'll try to say, so one of the skills I didn't have time to mention, which I think is important for finance, is this idea of computational thinking. And I'll just simplify it, which is when you say to your Siri, right, a lot of you are using Siri on your iPhone or whatever you're talking to, Amazon has one as well, and the Android, and you say, I want to get to Montreal. And Siri comes back to you and says, I'm sorry, I don't understand you. And so then you have to go directions. And then Siri understands you and says, oh, where do you want to go? And you say, Montreal. That's computational thinking, and it's a skill that a lot of the computer firms really feel that we should be integrating into kids' programs. Because as you work side by side with databases and computer systems and smart machines, we need to be able to deliver the thinking, the problem, so that computers can actually help us assist. So the whole idea is that computational thinking is a way that we can deliver information and queries to systems so that they can help us solve problems.
And so that's how our thinking needs to evolve, really. How we work together with AI and together with...
We do it every day. I give the example of a dinner party. You know, linear thinking is you look at the list from top to bottom. Binary thinking, you look at the list from the middle. You know, parallel processing is you're making the dinner at the same time as you're setting the table. Pipelining is you're making the dinner, setting the table, and serving the dinner. This is all linear thinking. You're doing it every day. Trust me, you really are. This is all computational thinking. Pattern recognition, nobody ate the dessert. Nobody ate the dessert? Is my dessert bad, or are they all on a diet? Right, and storage. You know, you load the dishwasher, you empty the dishwasher, you load the dishwasher, you empty the dishwasher. We all use computational thinking every day. It's just, how do we include the smart machines into our process?
Right. This idea of communication evolving away from the written word and moving towards visual communication, little YouTube apps, all those sorts of things. I'm intrigued by that, and I wonder if there's going to be a cyclical reversion at some point back to writing, or do you see this as a never-ending?
So I look at that as distribution channels, right? So every generation is going to have a preferred mode of how they absorb information. I mean, I remember watching my grandfather, and it was all about the radio. That's how he absorbed his information. And then I watched, you know, my dad, and he absorbed his information through newspapers and magazines. And then, you know, my siblings through TV. And so, you know, and in 18 to 34s, as I mentioned, through YouTube. So I think it's that we just have multiple distribution channels available to us. Text is one, the written word is one, and many of us are very comfortable with that. But many of us are also very comfortable with other distribution channels of information. So I don't think we'll revert back. I think what we'll do is, they say Generation Z is quite adept at this, is that we have more abilities to integrate more distribution channels of information.
There have been a number of questions, just some recommendations for us about, you know, what social media you prefer and what any apps you can recommend to us that are your favorite things.
Okay, so I use LinkedIn because it's the professional network. So of all the social medias, that's the one that makes the most sense for me. So please link to me. I also am on Facebook and I'm on Twitter, but I'm actually on Facebook and Twitter because of the media. So I do a lot of TV and radio, and that's sort of where they want to be. I'm not really on Pinterest anymore because it's a very visual social network, but if you're selling something, you know, like quilts or, you know, anything artistic, you know, then you probably want to be on Pinterest.
Yeah.
So, you know, those are pretty much the social medias. You know, app-wise, you know, I live and die on Uber and Lyft because I travel so much. I live and die on any kind of app that has any kind of, travel information, airlines, because I'm always racing for the planes. But I use Fidelity's, app for investments, and E-Trade and Schwab and all of the transactions. So, I think we live in an app world. In fact, a lot of people are only developing now for apps. So I think it's worth getting comfortable with apps.
Two more quick things. One is artificial intelligence, just back to that, and the Delia story.
Yeah, so I'll tell you a funny story. Out by me in we got lots of crazies out in Palo Alto, right? We got Stanford University, we got Google, we got Facebook, we got Twitter, right? So everything is kind of, always in experimentation in Palo Alto. So there was this headline in the newspaper in April that this credit union, where actually I used to bank, had a artificial intelligent assistant named Delia, spelled capital D, capital E-H, L-I-A, all caps, who was stealing money from customers. And the story is that a Stanford student and a Google artificial intelligence wanted to do this experiment that could this artificial intelligence assistant help customers balance their savings accounts and their checking accounts. And so what Delia would do is memorize all of the entries, right, that people had each month: rent, gas, water, right, education, maybe loans. And Delia would make sure that the checking account only had enough in it to pay the bills, so that all the rest of the money could go presumably into the higher interest, which really isn't much anymore, but the higher interest savings account.
Yeah.
But here's what they said they forgot to do. Sometimes the bills don't come in the same every week. Maybe the rent does, but your heating bill might be high and your water bill might be low. So checking accounts actually had extra money. But no one gave Delia, right, the artificial intelligence, the instructions on what to do with the money. So she pocketed it, and she put it into the Delia account, right? And all these customers, right, were like, what's happening to my balances, right? They're not going into savings. Where'd they go? So what's interesting is I'm sure thousands of people called the credit union. Well, on April 7th, an article came out in the same paper 7 days later that said, April Fools, right? That the article was written on April 1st, and it was totally a joke. It didn't happen. But you know what we say in Silicon Valley? Anytime you see something spelled capital D, capital E-H, you know it's a symbol for something. Right. So was it really a hoax? Or was it really like, did it happen? So, something to think about.
Who knows? Last question. How do you maintain your energy level? Awesome.
Oh, this Diet Coke is fabulous. You got to have it with you wherever you go.
Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in thanking Tracey.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate it.